It's 15th of August, Saturday, and 10 days before my exam, my German exam, and I've been pretty stressed because of everything that was going on. The relationship wasn't really working out. Financial problems, and that's with my life. I guess I felt this. There was this great magnitude of misery that came with the philosophy that I was trying to hold on to. And I guess the question that I frequently had was, do if I need to make an effort to hold on to a line of thinking, a certain philosophy, does that in any way negate the validity of that thinking or philosophy? And I honestly have no idea. And another thing I've realized is rational thinking, logics in my head, they're somehow closely related with the way I feel. So sometimes I would feel really great after having a realization, or after sort after a series of you know thoughts. But then at times I would just feel really shit out of nowhere, and it also hinders my ability in thinking, and the philosophy or thoughts alone cannot make me feel any better. And I can't really wrap my head around this. I think it's one of those things. I either figure it out at some point in the future, or I'll never do. And it's not really within my interest at this in the current stage. I bought some canvases, and I'm gonna start painting. I fucking hate painting, but I'm gonna start painting. And this just feels like the time when I kind of refused to go to college, and when I was kind of forced to, I just picked a major that I absolutely fucking hated. It's like I don't know if it can be counted as an act of rebellion. I think of it as a rebellion against myself, because I would tell myself to not do it. But this moment I do it, that liberation has a valid ground in my head. And I think that initial liberation from myself eventually takes me to a mental space that is a lot more liberated. But to get there, I need to make the initial attack towards myself. I have to break that boundary, that sandbox, or whatever the cage that I constantly put myself in. And then after I'm out of it, I've quite frequently found myself being able to grasp things that I wasn't able to before. So I got some more canvases, and I guess it's really funny how much I am influenced by my emotions. Like I, none of even if I'm being extremely lucid, that lucidity alone does not provide me sufficient amount of materials for my brain to hold on to and not feel like I'm constantly getting fucked by the world. So that is what's going on. But I guess one thing I really want to talk about, or at least the video and for the video, the reason I have this video on is because at some point I'm gonna go down that spiral again. And I'm gonna be in that pit hole and I'm gonna feel shit. And that could happen in 2 hours. So this is for myself. I want myself to come back to this video and sort of just being able to hear myself talking about this. And so the central idea is the rebellion against myself, but in some way it's also against the world, because I am largely influenced by this world. I'm conditioned by the world. So that rebellion is very much of a centerpiece of this idea. And the disclaimer here would be that it is not about the thrill of rebellion. The rebellion itself, the act of rebellion itself, is not the source of any gratification. It does not give me anything. So the point is not about the rebellion itself, but what I can achieve through the act of rebellion against myself and the world. And for example, the canvas is the painting, that sort of creation, it's an unknown world for me. And I fucking hate it. I hate painting. I hate writing. I write, but I hate the act of writing, because it's, I like to think about things, but I'm not really good with my words, and it's just not my specialty. But I guess the more I do it, it puts me in this headspace where I'm exposed to a lot more stimulants, I think. And I'm not here to label it as good or bad. But yeah, and I guess the reason this is such a difficult topic is because we're so used to having a justification or reasoning behind doing something, right? And that justification, a lot of times, what is something that it is a kind of justification that we're able to convince other people with, For us, for oneself, you don't need none of that. You just do it because you feel like it, right? For example, me going from engineering to physics and philosophy, or me choosing to paint, or me choosing to doing something that I've always told myself to not to. But when it comes to explaining this to people around me, to my family or friends, I quite frequently find myself looking for things that would eventually kind of like reason it out for them. And what does it do? I mean, I guess it can bring them a peace of mind, but the error here is that it's not when you make those statements in an attempt to explain things to your friends and family. That persuasion is the only purpose of those statements. And a step further, the external validation that you get from people that you successfully persuade. And there's nothing beyond that. And I think it's a surrender to the rebellion when you do that. I'm not trying to romanticize a philosophical concept, and I don't even think this is a philosophical topic to begin with. But I think it's worth thinking about doing things without a valid reasoning or justification behind it. It takes courage, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a good or bad thing. Labeling thing is very difficult. Different standards, different definitions on the terms, so I'm not going to do that. But I do think it's worth considering. I do think it's worth asking the question of, is it really necessary for me to justify this to myself or other people? What am I really trying to achieve through this justification? And because we frequently justify things just so that we could have a peace of mind. But then eventually we realize that that justification is far off from the reality. We are not able, we don't have the capacity or ability to predict anything in the future. And so when you make a decision in your life and you want to move towards that point, and you frequently hear yourself making quite a lot of reasonings about it, I guess it's really worth thinking about why you're doing it. And a lot of times we're doing it just because we're scared. And that reasoning itself does not provide much meaningful materials other than this peace of mind, which fundamentally is close to a delusion. So I do think there is more lucidity available to you when you decide to do something and you refuse to explain your decision behind doing it. Of course, at times you need to do it. At times, especially when you're talking to people, of course, you want to explain it, like, just so that you could have that conversation. Like, I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to push this into an absolute. But what I'm very interested in is the sort of motivation and the lack of insights that we have into the motivation behind us doing certain things. So that is kind of one thing that I wanted to talk about in this video. And I guess yes. So that's it. Sort of being in the state where you are aware that you're not able to reason about it, but not letting it negate what you are, what you do, what your decisions along the way, So I guess that's a part of it. And I guess a part of this also comes from this idea that we quite frequently like to hold on to an identity. People like to call themselves painters, writers, or a doctor comes with a license, so it's a thing. But and I'm not against labeling of oneself. I'm just saying that this psychology of us feeling the need to justify our existence through this idea of identity. And when we set an identity of ourselves, in some way it fills the gap that comes from our lack of capability, the gap that exists in our insecurities. Well, I should say the gap is equivalent to the insecurities. So I shouldn't say that the gaps exist within the insecurities. But in other ways, it also limits us very much. Limits us so much. Because identity has to come from our understanding of the world, our perception towards that identity in the setting of the society, right? And our perception towards that is extremely underdeveloped, merely because there's so many arbitrariness and uncertainties in the world in how humans act, behave, and how we think, and the way we are, and the way the society is. So I guess one thing that I'm kind of trying to be careful about is to not hold on to an identity, and just being in this state of being nothing. And some people do that. Like, it's very easy for some people, and for others it's extremely hard. Especially for me, I've always been very, very, very used to having an identity, and I guess this lack of identity kind of, in some way, really fucks me up. But one big difference between having an identity and not having an identity here, and I feel like this is a very good insight, is your perspective towards the world changes. When you have an identity, you're looking at yourself from the eyes of others. But when you don't have an identity, you're looking at the world from the eyes of yours. Because identity is assigned. It's a matter of perception. Even when you assign yourself an identity, it is not, in some way, it is very much through the eyes of a third person. You're just the one that's doing the act. And I suppose that in some ways, our obsession with having an identity limits us from fully engaging with the world around us. So yeah. So I guess the point of this video is just that you have to get used to getting used to the sort of state of not having an identity, the void and the emptiness that comes with it. But then at the same time, to fill that gap, you just be yourself. You kind of react to the world as you would. That very natural, almost instinct-like reactions that you have towards the world. I think it takes a little bit of effort to really recognize that, and and then the other point being that the lack of reasoning and the lack of logics as a human being. And finally, I feel like, before I end this video, one thing that I've learned recently is that all the realizations worldview, philosophy, outlook, whatever you call it, in some way it does provide us comfort. I think there's a certain level of comfort that comes with lucidity. But again, it could be also, lucidity itself is also, lucidity is a very emotional thing. So it's ironically a very emotional thing. I think as a human being, when when I say I have the lucidity, I'm referring to this kind of mental clarity. And the mental clarity, I can't explain where it's coming from, right? So I guess in many ways it's it's a very emotional thing. It's just a kind of perception. And a very big component of that perception that I am in a state of lucidity, that I have acquired lucidity, is comfort, which is a very direct awareness towards my feelings. Comfort. We feel comfort. At least I do. We don't reason it out. Like we don't infer the conclusion that, oh shit, I'm comfortable right now. No, we don't. It's a kind of feeling. And I feel like for me to judge if I'm in the state of lucidity, it's comfort. But I'm not talking about like the sort of like comfort where I'm just feeling good. It's like, for example, if I'm in a state of uncertainty and that uncertainty is driving me crazy, again, being aware that I'm going absolutely mental, that I'm going insane, provides me this level of comfort. Because for whatever reason, it seems that I am able to look at it. I'm able to have this observation of what is going on. So, and of course, it's not supported. So I wouldn't be offended if anybody calls it delusion. I'll call it a delusion. So that's the kind of comfort that I'm talking about. And the explanation as to why I think it's a very emotional thing. Yeah.